Over the last few decades, China's economy has been growing at a staggering pace. As the process of urbanization in China picks up speed, many Chinese cities have emerged as global megacities, becoming a symbol of China's economic achievement. In many respects, cities have become the essential foundation of China's future economic powerhouse. Meanwhile, the economic performance of Chinese cities varies significantly from one another, and their economic growth is in great relevance to their administrative divisions and geographical natures. Some of the most well-known cities in China, like Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, are municipalities directly under the central government. Other role models in city development in China, like Guangzhou, Harbin, Nanjing, and Hangzhou, are provincial capitals of their respective provinces, often enjoying the most beneficial economic policies within their provinces. To get a full picture of city development in China, it might be helpful to investigate the prefecture-level cities that made up the majorities of Chinese cities. There are in total 334 cities in China, of which 294 are prefecture-level cities. Prefecture-level cities are of interest in understanding China's economic growth for two reasons. Firstly, they made up 88% of all Chinese cities. And secondly, their economy is less influenced by policy inclines than provincial capitals. Nonetheless, it is not practical to collect and analyze data of all 294 prefecture-level cities. In this report, 27 cities are selected as a sample to represent those cities, as labeled on the map. The selection method is to choose the biggest prefecture-level city in each Chinese province, apart from their provincial capitals. These cities might represent the most economically volatile region in each Chinese province, not assisted by arbitrary economic policies from the central or provincial government. The latest credible data describing the GDP of individual Chinese cities are the year 2018 figures from the Chinese Bureau of Statistics 2019. Nonetheless, the Bureau does not provide data about every prefecture-level city. Some of the city data are found in relevant local Bureau of Statistics, like the Jiangxi Bureau of Statistics, which is a sub-institution of the National Bureau. Data samples are presented in the snapshot on the PPT. As for geographical information, this report primarily measures distances between cities and distance from the cities to the coast or ports. These measurements are mainly done using the ruler function in the Google Earth Pro. There are many factors that may produce economic discrepancies across different regions. In this report, the primary focus is on regional differences, the neighboring factor, and the distance to the coastline, or the distance to a major seaport. The diagram below demonstrates the GDP of 27 cities studied in this report. They are colored on the map of China to demonstrate the spatial distribution of the data. Using different saturation of the same color to represent the numeric values of city GDP. Overall, the coastal provinces in the east have the highest GDP in their second largest cities, while provinces inland saw a gradual decrease in GDP of second largest city as they get further from the east coast. Traditionally, China is divided into 6 regions, known as the North, East, Central South, Southwest, and the Southeast. Regional discrepancies with respect to economic performance is not negligible, as cultural and climate factors may profoundly influence the economic performance through numerous socio-economic factors. The bar chart uses a spectrum color sequence to visualize the GDP of city groups in different regions in China. Overall, the East enjoys the highest level of economic performance, followed by the Central South, except the small port city of Sanya. The North, Northeast, and the Southwest are comparable in terms of GDP, although the North and the Northeast both have one outlier city with greater GDP value. In addition, the Northwest sees the least economic development as a whole, with 3 cities' GDP lower than 1,000 units. In a more generalized classification, China could be divided into northern and southern China based on the historical Qingling-Huaihe line. The north and the south are vastly different in terms of climate, culture, and population. It would also be of interest to examine whether the differences in latitude would ultimately influence the economy of prefecture-level Chinese cities. A bidirectional bar chart is used to demonstrate the differences between North and the South by grouping cities according to their latitude. As the graph illustrates, the average GDP of the cities in the South are around 1,000 units higher than their northern counterparts. Nonetheless, there are only 3 cities in the South that enjoys a GDP above the southern average, while there are 5 northern cities that are above the northern average. The economic development in the northern China seems to be more average than the south, while the average level of the southern cities, considering the influence of the 3 outliers, are higher than their northern counterparts. Another factor of interest is the city's distance towards its provincial capital. As many scholars have argued, being closer to a larger city will have both negative and positive economic influences. A polar scatter plot is used to demonstrate the distribution of city GDP based on their distance to their provincial capitals. The size of the circles is weighted to represent their GDP size, and the distance from circles to the origin represents the city's distance to their respective provincial capitals. From the graph, there isn't sufficient evidence to suggest that a city's economy is dependent on its distance to capital by a very large extent. Nonetheless, there is still possibilities that the distance to provincial capitals might affect the economy to some extent, though not as much as factors like regions and neighboring economies. To answer these questions, more cities should be added into the sample to increase the data resolution. In future studies, selecting 5 cities in each province might provide more details regarding the distance factor. The last factor this report analyzes is the city's distance towards the sea. Being closer to the sea often gives the cities an edge in economic development. The sea provides opportunities to establish ports and therefore generate the potential for foreign trade and international investment. The graph below demonstrates the city's GDP on the y-axis versus their distance to the sea on the x-axis. From the graph, it is clear that the city's economy is directly linked to its distance to the sea. Seaside cities nearly occupied the highest section of GDP sizes, except for the city of Sanya, which is situated on the small island. Nonetheless, the cities with a 250 kilometers to 1,250 kilometers distance to the sea seems to be scattered around the graph, with no clear trend. A 3D scatter plot with each axis representing a different variable is used to summarize the influence of the two deterministic factors that determines a prefecture-level city GDP. Among them, the regions a city belongs to, especially their distances to the sea, and the GDP of their capitals are of the deterministic factors. Besides, cities located near the sea or situated in southern China are likely to give the city an edge in economic performance. In addition, the distance from prefecture-level cities to their provincial capitals are of little effect on their economy size. Distances to neighbors seems to be irrelevant with regards to a city's economic size. Below are the 3 references used in this presentation. Thanks for watching.